If you're here like me to learn something new, we'll be using FastAPI. Last video we created a quickly in 10 minutes API using FastAPI. Here we will just take it to the next level where instead of passing simple string while calling API, we would be passing JSON data. For that, the new concept we would be learning is Pydantic. It's very simple and let's do that. We'll be seeing simple three steps to add data structure to the API request which you call. What we are going to do is I'll just show you how currently our code behaves when you want to add the milestones via API. As you remember, just to refresh your memories, this is the decorator. In decorator, you pass which method and what is your URI parameter, what is your API path. And once you hit on this API path, what is the function that it's going to execute? That's what about simply so far fast API. Let's run the current API. What I'm going to do is I'll be running the curl command to add new milestone. So curl, it's simple command if you remember or if you know. Curl minus x give because we are calling the post endpoint and I'll be passing my API is running. Hopefully I'll just check it. If not, then I'll just run it on. Put 8000 and I have to call milestones. Then this will become my query parameter and I have to give it as string. Let me just shift it a bit. And what is my milestone? Milestone is equal to, yeah, I can just give learn API and I just press it. Okay, it says fail to connect, which means it's very simple. I didn't run the my application. My application is not running because ultimately you are running API, which means you have to run the server. So for this, you have to type the command uvcon. Hope you have installed the uvcon package. If not, just install pip install uvcon. And basically I switched to another terminal where now I would be running this application. So uvcon, what is my file name? My file name is comeback. I don't know why I gave this name. Comeback then colon app, that will be constant word you have to give, and I will use with configuration parameter reload, I guess. So whenever I modify something in this code window, it's going to reload the whole code on here. So do that. My application is done, ready. I'll just minimize this to give more space here. And then let's run this command. So it says added milestone. You see, the moment I added, it shows that you call this API, this is this post endpoint 200 okay. Everything was well. That's what it says 200 okay. So you just run. This is our current behavior. This is what we did in last call. Now what I want to do is instead of passing this as text and query parameter, real time we would like to pass the JSON data, proper JSON payload. So that's what we are going to do. So for this, since now we would be passing a proper data structure and we want to validate the data structure as well. So if you're passing some two fields, three fields in the API request, we want to ensure that those two fields or three fields are actually present in the API request. For that, three steps. First step, we have to import the specific library which allows to define data structure in Python, which is Pydantic. So from Pydantic, import base model. Now, second thing is we will defining the structure. For defining structure, we will be using class. We will be defining class. Let's give name class name as milestone. Just naming convention, we usually use the letter initial letter will be in capital. You can give any name. We would be extending the base model class which we imported. Done. Next step. Now let's define structure. For example, we would be adding milestone. The milestone data type is string. And second thing is we would be adding is achieved. So go, I'll define next parameter. Let's define the data type is boolean and that's it. And now the third step, after defining structure, we have to use it somewhere. Why it says base model is not, oh, it's sorry, bad models. Okay. So now what I do, you see when I modify the code, it just recompiles it, not recompiles, but it just basically interpreter is again running the whole code once more. And now I have to use this. The third step is I just need to use it somewhere. Now where somewhere? So whenever I will be creating milestone in post method, I have to use this. Now how can I use this? So not here. I just need to define string. Right now I was passing this milestone as a string. Now I would like to give it a structure. So that's the change. And now let's test it. Okay, instead of, so right now, as of now, I was giving added milestone as a string value whenever we were adding milestone. Let's pass the full, let's pass the full list, or let's pass the specific milestone which we added. Okay, and now let's run. Now, because every time this code, whenever I modify, the whole code gets run. The whole code gets run, then again, the list will be wiped out. So whatever the post call which we have made earlier, there will be nothing, zero item in the list. So we have to again run. So whenever you modify the code, if you want to run it, make sure you start with post call. Then only your list will be populated and you can test it. Now what I'm doing is, sorry, yeah. So here, I just need to change this call because instead of passing now query parameter as a string, which we are doing now, we will modify with the data. So let's define header because now we are passing JSON data in API request while creating milestone in the post endpoint. And the header will be contained type is equal to application slash JSON. We will define data as well. Now data I'll define in quote, truly two curly brackets because it's JSON. And what I have to pass is two argument. You can see line number 6 and 7, milestone. Oh, it's JSON, so let me put it in double quote. And what is my milestone? Learn Python, or I would say learn API. Is it achieved? Is achieved. I'll just make it bigger so we don't need actually this window. Is achieved? Oops, yeah. No, because we are still learning. False. Okay. So this is our JSON. And what is the URL? So finally, the URL where we need to make a call is, again, we'll put it in quote, 127.0.0.1. Port is 8000 slash, you see the line number 17, milestones. But now we are not passing any query parameter because we are passing this as a data in JSON, right, with minus d argument. Let's test it. Okay, JSON decode error. What it says, something I am missing. It is expecting is achieved false, blah blah blah. It says JSON is invalid, my body 39. Am I adding something which is making it wrong? I don't know. Let me check my earlier request if I am missing something. I think looks like maybe, let me see. Uh, what it says is, I'm really not sure. I'll directly go to the chat GPT and better I go there just to get quick idea, right? So I'll go to just to get quick error and may not be wrong. And I would say, what was the error? Ah, this is what I usually do just to check the error. If anything, I'll make this window bigger and it says unprocessable entity. Looks like some character is coming which I should not be passing. Let me just check quickly. So this is what I am getting as an error, right? So I'll I'll copy this whole thing, copy, go to ChatGPT. I'll just hide it to other distractions. I am creating fast API and below is code and error. Let's see, it will quickly tell me something. The curl request is failing because the JSON you pass has equal to, you see. So I should not be using. So I'm just showing this chat GPT. This is just my way how I learn anything faster. So that's the my way so that if you want to try this, you can use a chat GPT just to quickly get idea what's happening. So this was the issue, right? I should not be using, not here, content type, here. So it's just an object, but I was passing equal to. That was the problem. That's why it was saying unprocessable entity. Now I'll just simply execute it. Just to show you one more time before I execute. What we are doing, we are just running curl with minus x command. Minus x is standard. I mean, we will give always as a constant argument. We are making the post endpoint call. This is my header with minus h. This is minus d. This is data. This is my whole URL milestones without passing any parameter because we are passing this as a JSON object. Done. And we got the response back returning milestones. So whatever we are adding here, that's what we are responding. So it just says, hey, you added is achieved as false. So we got it. Perfect. Now let's do a get command. So for get command, what we will be doing is, I can run it again, but yeah. So I just curl minus get man, and what is the endpoint? 127.0.0.1. Port is 8000 and milestones. Why milestones? This is my get command in slash milestones, and it will give me list. Output will be list. List is nothing but it will give me the milestones. Milestone is that's where we add all those milestone. So this is what we will be seeing. We are basically printing this variable line number 15. It should work because we did not modify anything in code level, so list should not be blank. Yeah. Now let's add one more. Now what I'm going to do is, I would say instead of learn API, let's say we want to learn Java. Done. Okay, so learn Java is added. Now let's do a get. So now you can see there are two milestones added. Yes, first and second. Now let's play a little bit. What I'm going to do is now I'll be adding some default value, which means before I show the default value, let me show you what I mean. So now if I run it, post endpoint, and if I do not give any value for example is achieved or not, okay, what will happen? Because I just mentioned that there should be some validation happening. Validation, which means validation of data structure, which means milestone you really supplied or not, is achieved you really supplied or not. So let's see. You see, it's giving error. It says detail type missing, location where in body. What is missing is achieved. And what is the message is achieved field is required. So the API call itself is not getting successful, right? So over here, if you see here on our terminal, this is our the end user output. But here, if you see it, okay, why it's not happening? But what's happening is, yeah, food, not 422. But this is what it's, yeah, yeah, okay, sorry, come on. So it says 422 unprocessable entity. Yeah, so what I'm going to do is, so which means it's rejecting, which means you have to pass the value. But what if the other way around? Which means it says is achieved is expected. But what if you want to what if you want to, if end user forgot to supply this value and we want to make it as a default. So if end user is not supplying any value for is achieved, let's make it as a false. So for that, by default, so we are passing a default value to this API parameter. For that, what we are going to do is we'll simply put it false. I save the code, so whole code has run. So my list has cleaned up. So again, I have to do a post call, then only I would be able to test it. So we just simply added the default value by adding the assignment operator equal to and false. So if is achieved is there is no value provided by end user in API request, it will supply false. So right now I'm just passing milestone as line Java. You can see over here, I'm not putting anything for is achieved. Earlier it was giving me error. Now it will not give me any error. You see, it just pass it with default value false. You got it, right? So this is another concept where it will validate plus it will basically initialize with default value. So this is how you are basically giving a good structure. Before we end it, let's just let's just finally tweak it. What I want to show you is just a second. Yeah, so how we can modify or how we can define the structure for the response of API as well. And this is very useful when you are creating ultimately applications or API to the front end application. So if mobile application or web application is calling this API, they would like to know what is the response schema of so and so API. For that, you can also define or you can attach specific schema or data model as a response schema. How you can do this with simple single one step. What you need to do is, for example, if mobile application, web application is calling this post endpoint and you want to basically define a response schema, like what this API is going to respond, you simply in the decorator, you simply add comma, and you just mention response model. Yeah, and the same class. For example, we can define different one as well, but we want to basically give the same response. So we are just defining here as a response is this one. Ideally, this will not be change anything in response part, but we will see it in the next video because this will be very clear to the calling application that this API is returns what? What is the return structure? What is the response structure of this API? That's what it does. We will test it quickly. So I'll just make a call. You should not notice any difference. Yeah. And now before we end, let's quickly practice the last video skills. What we are going to do is we would be adding one more endpoint where end user can basically pass, I would say, end user wants to basically fetch the specific milestone. So right now here we are giving the full list. Basically we are giving all milestones. But now let's add one more endpoint where we would be giving the specific maybe zeroth milestone, first milestone, second milestone, third milestone, the specific one. So how we can do that? Because we would be defining another API endpoint, which means it starts with decorator. We'll go for gap. It's a get endpoint. Okay. And milestones slash, since it would be URA parameter, so we have to pass inside. We can put anything. I'm just putting milestone ID. So whatever the ID is being passed by end user, we would be fetching that particular position milestone stored in the list. So define, and I would say get specific milestone. I think it's long function name. Let me keep it that way. And I have to use the same parameter which I used in curly bracket, milestone ID, and the type will be integer. And what we're doing is we would be returning return. So from the list, ultimately we are adding list. List is defined in line number 15. So from here, I would be passing milestone ID. That's what we are returning. If you want to define as a proper syntax in Python way, then what we are giving as an output, we are giving output as milestone, which means ultimately we are returning this structure, right? We are returning this one. So that's why I've defined as milestone. Let's see. Let's test it. And is it any error? I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so. And what I'm going to do is let's make a post call. And here I would say, yeah. So let's add, because right now our code is reloaded, so list is empty. So I would say learn maybe Gen AI and is achieved. Let's supply this time value is achieved. It's still false. Ideally, if I do not give, the value will be supplied, right? Go. So it's added. And what we want to do is, let's add one more. And so I'm just going here. I am just rerunning the same command. Instead of learn Gen AI, let's put Gen, let's put just AI. Okay, so now let's run the earlier endpoint where I'm going to call the call X where get command and I'll be getting all. So I'm running this one slash milestones. So you would be seeing the two one. Let me clear it so it would be easy for you. You see the two, but now let's test the third endpoint which we added. What we are going to do here is we'd be giving the specific ID. Maybe we want to return the first endpoint. First, which means in terms of index, the second milestone. So you got it, learn AI. If I give the zeroth one, because array works here in Python as well as zero based indexing. So this is my zeroth one. Right? So if I give zero, it gave me this one. If I give one, it gave me this one. So this was just quick practice on how you can really quickly add new endpoints in Python using FastAPI. And let me know if you want to really learn something new concept, because the goal is to learn something new than our day is good day. Shoot in comment so that I can just explain it like a very simpler way. If you stuck up, if you still have any doubt in any of the concept which we talk, just shoot out a comment. I'm ready to explain. You pick any idea in Python, Gen AI, machine learning space, data engineering space. I'm happy to bring video on that. So that's all for now. Thanks.